The Hobbit. Whether you're in the group that loves or in the group that hates these movies, there's no denying that these were pretty big films and made a lot of money. Even though the movie was called The Hobbit, most of the attention focused on the dwarves and their epic quest to retake the Lonely Mountain from the dragon, Smaug. We spent 3 movies watching these dwarves fight for what was rightfully theirs, so it's hard not to get a little attached to some of them. But have you ever wondered what happens after all was said and done? Dwarves lived for quite a while, so where were these characters during the Lord of the Rings trilogy? The answers for some of them might not be exactly what you want to hear, so let's dig in. Oin. 48 years after being settled in the Lonely Mountain, Oin made his way back to Moria to reclaim the realm for the dwarves. It was 5 years later that orcs attacked, and when he could not escape over the bridge of Khazad-dûm, he tried to exit through the Holland Gate. It was there he was killed by the Watcher in the Water, a creature that the Fellowship would later encounter. Glóin. Ah yes, Gimli's father. His life was much longer and much more peaceful than his brother Oin's. He remained in the kingdom under the mountain and was there at the Council of Elrond when the Fellowship was first formed. He would later die at the age of 253. Dwalin. Dwalin was a smart one. He decided to stay at the Lonely Mountain where he lived out the rest of his life, dying at the ripe old age of 340. He lived through the War of the Ring, but it was never revealed if he or Glóin ever took part in it. Balin. Good old Balin. In the Hobbit movies, he was one of the more liked dwarves. In fact, he ended up leading an expedition to Moria where he later became the Lord of Moria for some time. Until the orcs attacked and he was killed by one of their archers. Remember that tomb in Fellowship of the Ring? Yup, that's Balin's tomb. Bifur and Bofur. Bifur has an axe in his skull. I think he's had to deal with enough stuff in his life to be bothered with any more violence. He also stayed back in the Lonely Mountain and lived out his life. His age of death is unknown. Ditto for Bofur. He also lived out his life in the mountain. You know, for a place called the Lonely Mountain, it doesn't seem quite so lonely there, does it? Bombur. Bombur, like many of the others, stayed behind in the Lonely Mountain and enjoyed the rest of his life. A little too much. Bombur had grown so fat that it eventually took the strength of 6 dwarves to lift him to the dinner table. Dori and Nori. Dori and Nori also stayed in the mountain where they grew their wealth and lived rich and happy for the rest of their lives. Ori. Like Dori and Nori, Ori, the lovable idiot, also stayed in the mountain where he lived out his life peacefully with a wife and children. Except that didn't happen. Ori actually joined the expedition to Moria, and after burying Balin, he was killed by the onslaught of orcs that attacked. Remember that morbid diary entry Gandalf read in the Fellowship of the Ring? That was Ori's diary. And that was Ori. Bard Bowman. Bard rebuilt his ancestral town of Dale at the foot of the Lonely Mountain. He eventually became its king, established and maintained good relations with the dwarves where he lived peacefully, and his son Bane succeeded him after his death. Tauriel. I should save this for when I do my Hobbit based on video eventually, but I need to vent it here. Killy never fell in love with an elf, much less even met Tauriel because she wasn't even a character in the book. Peter Jackson created her just for the movie so he could force in an awful dwarf-elf forbidden relationship to emotionally manipulate the audience. Evangeline Lilly was great in her role, but she was unnecessary and only weakened the story in my opinion. So there you have it, the fate of the dwarves. The adventures that happened in The Hobbit definitely impacted what would eventually take place in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, mainly due to it being how Bilbo found the Ring of Power. While at times there were unnecessary moments in the films, there were also a lot of moments that captured the magic of Middle-earth and made you want to be part of it again. Let me know down in the comments which dwarf is your favorite, and as always, stay tuned and stay awesome.